Good morning and welcome to the daily chapter reading of It's Your Loss. Living with Grief is Hard. Hope this book will help. Try to focus on the facts, not your fears about those facts, to stop yourself spiraling. Write them down if you can. Carve out time in your day or your week to be alone and focus on the thing. You could go for a walk, book in a therapy session, run a bath, or sit and journal, whatever works for you. If you know you're prone to certain behaviors like online shopping or drinking too much, keep the action of the behavior but do it light. So you might do online window shopping and not actually hit buy now, or pour yourself a tonic but not add the gin. Sometimes it's just the distraction we're craving. Robin on the unmistakable whiff of guilt, anger, anxiety, and the rest. I'm going to give you the absolute opposite standpoint, of course. I'm doing loss in a full ball gown or the bow of a ship, screaming into the wind while someone records and airs it, hopefully globally. I am big and public, bombastic and direct. I am the anti-Emma. So here's my completely black and white, uncompromising take on it. I don't think grief is a thing you do. I think the verb to grieve is utterly misleading, because often what you're doing is feeling a staggering number of emotions, all in a randomized order and in very quick succession, and then feeling absolutely nothing before feeling all the feelings again. Think of it like high-stakes emotional tombola, ultimate chaos with peaks of pure joy and abject misery. Loss to me is about looking at something in retrospect thinking, that was wonderful, I really should have appreciated that more, and then compulsively examining every facet of it. Whether that's your human man, the ace job you jacked in, or that really excellent 80s jumpsuit you lent to a so-called friend, never to be returned. You will feel so happy you had it. You will be so mad it's gone. You will be even madder that other people don't get how absolutely incomprehensible the fact that it's gone is. You'll be lonelier than you've ever been, yet feel more understood when you're standing amongst the people that get it. You'll feel so much guilt. It's really tiring, having that fired at you 24/7. But if you know this and you can get more comfortable with its chaotic nature, it might be marginally less terrible. Let's have a little look at a few of the emotions you're likely to come across. Some of which Emma has already mentioned, but bear repeating because they're the biggies and some that are more likely to pop up if you're an extrovert or just really like shouting. Sadness. I don't have to walk you through the sadness because you got that. You feel it. It's in your bones. Boringly predictable. You will feel it like you are both a very wet duvet and the midsection of Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You. You can go through sadness with ease, whether you're like me and want to plaster it on a 140-foot billboard in Piccadilly Circus, or you're like Emma and want to hold it very close and very tight, turning it over and over in your hands until it's worn smooth. Guilt, the one you've all come for. Man, oh man, will you feel some guilt? Uncharacteristically, I agree with Emma here. I reckon guilt is the mind's way of tricking you into not looking at the sad. It's self-preservation. Make it all about how bad you were, focus in on it, and you sneakily bypass the feelings that make your throat close up. And it lingers there, so you just keep replaying scenes trying to change the ending. You know that ending can't be changed, but your mind just gave you a job and it probably did it to stop you completely falling apart. I have felt so much guilt. Guilt about letting friendships slip away or shouting at people until they were unsustainable. Guilt about losing very precious things. I still, on a monthly basis, wonder if I should get a metal detector to try to find my nan's ring she lent me and I lost when I was 4. I feel guilt about the years of not speaking to my mum that I won't get back, even though they have been the most peaceful of my life. But bereavement guilt is something else. I regretted everything. Not getting married before she died, not getting to the hospice sooner, not being nicer, ruining her last Christmas. Yep, that is a toughie. Because my Nan and I were very close and very similar, and she systematically hid the fact that she was going to die from all of us, we had a massive row on her final Christmas. I acted like any stupid ass in their 20s would with a parent they figured was immortal. And then she wasn't, and I had ruined the last of her favorite days. It is physically painful to write that, but now it is not all I think about all the time. I can accept that I am just one of the many members of the family that have ruined Christmas over the years. I can acknowledge that I am not even the only person that pissed her off that day. I can look at our dynamic and think, not ideal, but at least we were truly us. You'll probably have an equivalent guilt, and you'll probably hold it for the rest of your life. Just take a breath every time you do. Hold it at arm's length. Examine all its nooks and crannies, and then position it on your memory shelf nestled amongst everything else. It won't seem so unforgivable then, I'm sure. Fear. Okay, so I've touched on this. The double whammy is coming up. Let's get the worst one out the way first. If you're here because you watched someone die, it was probably very frightening on a primal level. You know now what's coming for you. You see how very fragile we are and how unlike the cinematic version of people dying it is. It will play back in your mind and you will feel horrified. Go to a therapist. They will help you reframe it. As a culture, we've categorically failed to prep anyone for this element of loss, and it's a stinker. There seems to be a similar reticence in talking about birth, but there are no NCT classes to prepare you for watching someone die. More's the pity. Then there's the fear of yourself and for yourself. Just so much stuff. Conversely, if you lost someone or something precious and you weren't there at the crucial point of no return, there's also the fear of what it might have been like. You'll be scared you could have made it easier, more peaceful, or project managed it so it would sit in your mind palace more comfortably than the huge glaring void of infinite shit possibilities you have now. You are essentially damned if you do, and damned if you don't. Either way, you'll likely be so sad and so angry and so all over the place that you'll feel you have no handle on anything. You might feel this way forever, and then what would be the point? It is the very worst kind of torture. Just one breath at a time when it's all a haze. Make no big decisions. Perhaps write everything down in a big book of things to look at next month, year, or decade. Let yourself be scared because this is terrifying. But also look outwards and know that other people made it back from the precipice. You will too. And if you're here for a different kind of loss, and it frightened you, then you are well within your rights to say that too. Anything that pulls the rug out from under you is frightening, because the thing about the rug being pulled is that the first and most pressing matter you focus on is the fall. You are plummeting downwards. You don't know how and where you're going to land, and there's a good chance it's going to really hurt. No one has to have died for you to feel scared of that. It's innate and natural, and you're absolutely valid in feeling that way, so don't feel weird about expressing it. Happiness. It's a bit like sadness. Revel in it. If you're sad that you have lost a thing, then that is because the thing was astonishing and unique and utterly wonderful. Take yourself down memory lane. Those little vignettes aren't going anywhere, and again, our minds seem to go into autopilot and set them in Technicolor. I know the details will fade away and that it will be really hard to bear, but the big screen version of the person, place, thing you lost can honestly be such a salve. Bathe in those moments. I like to get out the photo albums and to make my family look at them as often as I can. It makes my Nan into a fairy tale, something that can get lost in and take so much joy from. Yes, there will be pain that the story ended where it did, when there were so many adventures left to have, but what a glorious stroke of luck we had her in the first place, the very best of women. Same with the old colleagues you've accumulated from jobs you missed, the blurry scenes of your childhood before a parent left, the insane chemistry you had with a partner 20 years ago. You need friends who remember all the reckless jollity now slipped away, including the explosion of color you all were in your youth. Anything that's gone is still there in a way, otherwise it wouldn't be such a wrench to lose it. But let's reverse it. What if you haven't got very happy memories of the lost thing? You might, I know it sounds awful, feel happy that someone or something that caused you pain and torment has gone. That is okay too. Again, I would advise getting some therapy pronto, cause that is an emotional tangle of epic proportions, but it is perfectly understandable to feel a joy at being released from an unbearable situation and to have those invisible bonds of trauma snipped. You probably aren't happy they're gone, you're happy that you're free. The loss you're experiencing might be you mourning for the life you could have had if that element hadn't been present. Completely understandable. If you take only one thing from this book, I hope it's that whatever you feel is perfectly natural and as complex and uniquely yours as your own fingerprint. The only thing to keep tabs on is whether it's manifesting in a safe and nourishing way. Anger. I spent a lot of the first few days after Nan died being really mad at family and friends for not being supportive enough or not congratulating me on doing so well despite my hideous loss and coddling me. I was mad Nan had died. I was mad other people who weren't as wonderful as she was hadn't died. I was mad the world was just going on like it hadn't happened. I was mad my life was on hold and the world seemed to have stopped. I was mad no one understood me. I was mad when people said they understood me because how could they possibly understand this misery? I think you can see where this is going. I was just very, very cross, and I told people, far too directly. If you're like Emma, you probably won't tell people but resolve to secretly and eternally hate them. Whatever your predicament and however you deal, anger is likely to be up there with some of your more frequent, uncontrollable, and completely baffling feelings. It's annoying and also a quick route back to guilt, which is nice. So you've got your sadness, your fear, your guilt, your happiness, your anger, and all the sub-emotions, despair, optimism, pessimism, ennui, the unrelenting need to control, etc., and they all feed into how you react to everything. Again, uniquely based on you. Again, often highly predictable. Think of it like Monica from Friends, explaining the erogenous zones to Chandler. It's like that. We just hit our preferred ones in our own singular subconscious order. Unfailingly, my emotions make me do this in times of trouble. 1. Get mad, anger. 2. Freak out, fear. 3. Distract myself and try to change something, control. 4. Fall on the floor, crying, sadness. You can apply that to any experience of loss for me. I have lost my trainers, get mad at my husband Jamie for putting them somewhere, freak out I'll never be able to replace them, distract myself and indulge my need to control the situation, meaning relentlessly looking for replacements on eBay and finally fall on the floor crying. I have lost my job, get mad at the company circumstances for creating a situation in which I have to leave the job, freak out I'll never be able to get another job, distract myself and indulge my need to control the situation by plotting the downfall of bad bosses, the world, or looking for another job, and finally fall on the floor crying. I have lost a friendship, get mad at the person I've grown apart from for not being better very specifically in the context of my life. Freak out I'll never be able to get that friend back, even though we've clearly grown apart. Distract myself and indulge my need to control by trying to make the best of it and reframe a relationship that's very much run its course and finally fall on the floor crying. embarrassingly predictable. Sometimes okay, sometimes wildly unhealthy. Particularly if you're someone who really goes deep on the need to control a situation as where the path to madness lies. And there are so many ways to do it. Trying to control your psychological thermostat by conducting some high risk emotional and sexual behavior, therapist. Trying to control your reduced ability to self soothe by medicating yourself into feeling okay, therapist. Trying to control your body and contort it to the kind of diminished shape that reflects every facet of yourself being left utterly wanting, therapist. Want to corral your family into acting like the Waltons so you feel like it's all going to be fine, therapist. The wild cards. Expanding on my very succinct examples above, there will actually be myriad ways the emotions squeeze themselves out of you, and the accompanying behaviors can be really bloody challenging for you and all the people around you, which is an instant go to guilt jail card. Sorry, do not pass go and do not collect 200 pounds. They're cyclical and there'll be old crutches that manifest in new ways, masquerading as helpful, but in actual fact, they're probably doing absolutely nothing for your posture. In bereavement, I really doubled down on mine. They were enhanced enough to scare the shit out of people, but because they weren't instantly life-threatening, no one really mentioned them. You might be doing this too, so be really honest with yourself. Have a ponder on what your more caustic coping strategies are and whether you're practicing them right now. Spoiler, you almost certainly are. Mine are painfully predictable, the first of which is to stop eating and weigh myself every day. It's my go-to and has been since my early teens, but I ramped it up with goals and mania and only eating certain percentages of food on my plate. I romanticized it. I felt that the nearly 1 stone that dropped from my pretty thin body was a perfectly normal response to the single most nourishing person in my life being gone. I honestly thought a little bit of my soul had detached and floated away like that film 21 Grams. My Nan was in all ways a feast, and now I just had a table of dust in front of me. I counted my ribs and thought it was all completely marvelous and dramatic and natural, except it was as natural as me eating half a slice of toast and an egg a day. I also threw the dial up on my straight-talking, no-nonsense northern persona. This is one I see a lot. Hurt people, to coin a gross saying. I absolutely hated so many perfectly supportive and reasonable friends and told a fair few so. I told them off for not asking enough or resolved to put them out of my life. I told people off for caring about other stuff too. I was cruel and selfish. To provoke people was one of the only ways I could feel in a pronounced way. I shared too much and listened too little. I got to the point I would have a panic attack if I was talking in front of more than 4 or 5 people. I became so anxious about my health I lived as though I was dying every day. Because the thing about losing someone is that often the way that you lost them will be the way you dread losing anyone who doesn't answer your call on the second ring. So yes, the resulting behaviors are awful and tiring, and you might well be a drag, but the people that matter will stick with you, deflecting emotional missile like the fucking SAS and waiting for you to get back to some semblance of normality. You will get there. You can't feel guilty about not being there yet, but it's probably good to look at how you're affecting other people. And that's coming from someone who rarely, if ever, thinks about how they're affecting other people. Maybe set a calendar reminder as an active way to examine things. Just look outwards once in a while, as impossible as that might seem. It'll provide a handy break for your frazzled mind. Don't go too far the other way though. It's very easy, if you're an introvert, to jam all the emotions into the emotional lockbox for fear of being a terrible burden. It's okay to be a bit of a burden. People can take your weight. In summary, experiencing loss is just throwing into relief all the things we feel every day and then adding some more rogue emotions for good measure. Then they get mixed up like Rachel's trifle in Friends. It tastes like crap to most people, but crucially, it will not kill you. It's just mince and cream. It's going to take a lot to force it down, and you are probably going to have quite the upset stomach. Literally, emotions do some funky shit to your body. But crucially, you will survive it and be armed with a much better understanding of how to navigate the various terrible layers of it next time. Bon appetit.